This is going to be a testing evening for me, since there's two unexpected, I should not really say unwelcome. They're very, they're very, very welcome, but anyway, they're here. Few years ago, I actually sat there and listened to someone called Robert Mickey. I think he was giving a course on script writing. I've kind of made a casual remark about dress code, which many of you seem to have done it very sort of zealously. I hope you will not be cold afterwards. Because the subject of our discussion tonight is about dependent arising. I thought it is good to create sort of festive and uplifting cause and condition. This is not to say that those who have come up here with just jeans and t-shirts, they are not going to be blessed by auspicious circumstances. Spontaneously, we decided to accumulate mantra of dependent arising, about 1,000 million or 100 million. How much was it? I forgot. So I thought it is appropriate to talk about the contents, the sort of the quintessential teaching of the dependent arising based on the mantra. Of course, I'll be only attempting to do this because this is a very deep and profound and infinite subject. Some of you may have wondered why we call this gathering, the sort of the title of this evening, as it depends, right? As it depends. I'm going to try and speak the dependent arising based on a very short work of Jamyang Khyentse Wangpo. So it's going to be quite technical and for newcomers, probably some of the jargon can be quite strange and alien. A very beautiful verses or praise to specifically the teaching of dependent arising was written by Dzongkapa. Those of you wish to further understand, it will really benefit if you read the Tendril Tepa, or the Praise to the Dependent Arising by Lama Tsongkhapa. According to Lama Tsongkhapa, there are millions of reasons why we can venerate and praise the Buddha as the supreme speaker or the peerless teacher. But there's one single reason that single out can be singled out, and that is the fact that Buddha taught the dependent arising. Now, my pronunciation is not good. I mean, if you are Sanskritist, but mantra Om Ye Dharma Hetu Prabhava Hedin Tekin Tathagata Hayavade Tekin Niroda Evam Badi Mahasharmana Swaha was first spoken as an answer to Shariputra, but I think by then he wasn't really referred to as Shariputra, who later became one of the most important disciples of the Buddha. After realization of the final truth in Mangadath, when Buddha Shakyamuni famously decided not to really teach, because he said that the truth is so profound and simple and deep, and it cannot be explained or narrated using limited human tools such as language, words, metaphors. So therefore, he decided not to teach. But this is, of course, very symbolic in itself, because when he decided, the very sort of expression of him saying that he cannot he's not going to teach, he's going to stay in the forest meditating, because it cannot be taught, it cannot be listened to, so to speak, that in itself is already a teaching. And historically, it is believed that Brahma and Indra, upon hearing this decision, went to Shakyamuni Buddha and requested the teaching, saying that even though the profound truth cannot be uttered and cannot be conceived through conceptions, there may be fortunate beings who can, step by step, reach to this point. Just a side note here. In this way, actually, so-called Hindu gods, the Buddhists owe a lot. If not for these two very important Hindu gods, Brahma, if not for him, probably Buddha may have not taught. Anyway, Buddha then taught, he began all his teachings, starting from the Four Noble Truths in Saranath, so on and so forth. Sometime around then, Shariputra, by then he was not, of course, he wasn't a follower of the Buddha. He curiously, with a lot of curiosity, he asked one of the 5 disciples of the Buddha, who actually sort of revolt. I don't know, some of those of you who are already well informed about Buddha's life should know. He sort of, out of curiosity, Shariputra asked either all of the 5 monks or one of one of the monks, I think his name is Asanji or something. And as an answer to this question, I think some believe Ye Dharma Hetu Prabhava, the mantra sort of got sort of emerged, or it became that, it's sort of the answer. And at glance, what he is saying can be quite simple, because sort of very briefly, and here again I'm not doing the justice by doing a very bad translation of these words like Gangi chönam jule rabdu jung junam teni tishin shik bisung tenam chang gang gopa evam dum mrawapone gejong chembo yin. As an answer to this question, he said that Buddha taught about cause, that everything came from a cause. And not only that, Buddha actually taught the different layers and types of cause. And then furthermore, Buddha taught how to extinct, so to speak, these causes. Now, at glance, you will find it's a very simplistic sort of answer, but actually, as Lama Tsongkhapa put it, this is a very, very, we are talking about 2,500 years ago of India, and this is really, I don't know, in today's time, it's very scientific. It's not at all sort of subjective or sort of missionary-like statement. It is very, very scientific. So this is why I thought the expression, it depends, it is such a profound statement. It's almost like if you ask even a simple questions like, what's your name? We could be almost answering this through, well, it depends. Or how are you? It depends. And it is really true. It really depends on so many cause and condition, so many, infinite. And of course, the human beings, ever passionate in wanting to know the real cause, have come up with a lot of answers. And Tenjing Drejung, or the dependent arising, teachings on dependent arising, has this set of answer. Now, of course, it is for you to judge whether this is making sense ultimately for you or not. Now there's so many elements, so many different angles in this. There's so many sort of nuances and way to understand this. And I think with you and I, we'll also have a lot of gap here, because many times the word I'm going to use, such as the suffering, the word suffering, dukkha, in Sanskrit, may not necessarily, we may not be really talking the same thing. For instance, when a trained Buddhist who's really well trained, when he or she hears that things comes from cause, that to this Buddhist is actually a perfect description of suffering. Anything that comes from cause is a bad news. Because if something comes from cause, it means dependent. Not that close to the codependency that Americans talk about. Not a little bit, but it's a really big time codependency in this case. But when we hear that the things come from cause, it immediately reflects dependency. Therefore, it reflects uncertainty, because you can always manipulate the cause. You can always corrupt the cause. And the cause has its own cause. And of course, therefore, we can corrupt that cause. Uncertainty is one very important element or the character of the suffering. So when I use the word suffering, this is something to think about, I think. So, anything that came from a cause and condition is basically dukkha, pain. Pain, maybe again, we have to come, okay, let's just use the word suffering for now. Anyway, there's this element of dependency and the uncertainty. So then, as I said, we all want to know. Okay, we all don't want to suffer, of course. That's very clear. Even though many of us, we don't really know the identity of suffering. But one thing that we all agree is that we don't want to suffer. And we want to be happy, of course. There's no argument on that one. So, a sentient being like you and me who wishes to be free from suffering, to be happy forever, of course, forever, very important, this one. Happily forever, that kind of. Then our immediate quest is the root of the cause. That is what we need to look for, isn't it? And this is why Gejong Gangi Chonam Jule Rabdu Jung Junam Teni Tijin Shikbesung. So Buddha has his thesis is maybe not the right word, but his view why or what is the root cause of all this suffering. root cause of all the suffering is nyönmongpa, kleshas, defilement, emotion. I don't know which word we will use this one. Anyway, Surijin Mahimba Yiracheba, I think this is how maybe I'll try to explain. Looking at something like a strawberry. Is it strawberry? What is this? Raspberry. Okay. Looking at something like this and immediately having a mistaken idea. Surijin, not really seeing the Surijin is how it should be seen. Yes. But since they are here, we will use, we will have to take advantage of them. Yes, how we should really see. And that's not happening all the time. And there's a really good summary by Sachin Gunga, one of the great Sakya master. Such a beautiful abbreviation of the 12 interdependent origination. Like when we look at something, immediately we see, but we see not as how we should see. Usually we see this, just briefly if I tell you, as whole, as in one unit, and as a label, what? Strawberry, raspberry, whatever, as a label. And then there's also many other things that really interferes us seeing it as how it should be seen. Like permanent, there's that, a little bit. Quite a lot, actually, permanent. There's this strong, maybe the permanent word, as I speak, it may sound very unfitting, but actually it is. Permanent, independent. We always see this as, we forget the dependency nature of the raspberry. So all of this put together, we end up seeing this with a mistaken sort of view. So we end up, so how we should see, we don't see. And this is basically, if you like, the mother of all the emotion. Hope, fear, expectation, everything comes from this. So then you look at this thing and your habit, see this as not how you should really see, but as something. Like in my case, strawberry. Because I don't know the differences. I guess the strawberry is the big one. Anyway, then if there is urgency, like hunger, like if you are vegan, is it vegan? Like these guys. If you are vegetarian, if you really need to eat fruits, if you are a fruit fanatic, or whatever, if you are hungry, then immediately you create an action. Well, not just action. I'll just abbreviate this according to Sachin Gunga, his work is really good. Like immediately you label raspberry, not mango, not starch, no calories. See, all of that, no calories, good for health, good for digestion, and then I need, I want, all this taking, labeling, creating ideas, all of that. And then it creates craving, and then around that time it has also given birth to giving birth to a lump. I think lump is a good word. Lump. Lump. Basically, our habit creates the lump. Like this. This is a lump. It's basically, it has become, the habitual pattern became a lump. It's a lump. Can you believe this? This is just... And this is basically also a lump. So it has given a birth to a lump. And this, because it has now given birth, guaranteed it's going to die. Birth leads you to the death. So on and so forth. So anyway, all that, what I've just explained, if you can recall, is what we call lejikununyamoba. Okay, so when we talk about emotions, we talk about three kinds of emotion: nyamombukununyamoba, lejikununyamoba, and chevikununyamoba. Nyamombukununyamoba is like basically having a mistaken idea of something, like basically not seeing the real truth, such as the dependency, the impermanence, the so on and so forth, and then which gives rise to lejikununyamoba, the emotion of action, I guess. Emotion, like craving, doing things, harvesting strawberry, buying, like measuring, all of that, which then gives rise to chevikununyamoba, gives rise to the emotion of birth. So these three basically are like the really abbreviation of the 12 interdependent origination. So this is what is taught by the Buddha. Okay? Just summarizing, we all want to be happy, we don't want to be unhappy, we want to be, we want to really not suffer. So what is the root of the cause of all this suffering? Many people have many ideas, but this is the Buddha's idea. And this, we are talking about Om Ye Dharma Hedu Prabhava, that mantra. So this is what is taught by the Buddha, that basically, when we say Buddha taught the cause, so this is what he taught. And this is the central of the very important teachings of the Buddha. In fact, almost all the teachings, such as the Hat Sutra or the Prajanaparamita Sutra, for instance. I mean, like if you look at the Prajanaparamita Sutra, like a Hat Sutra, it's like the most important sutra for the Mahayana people. And it's believed that it was like 2,500 years ago, there was a place called Vulture's Peak, and like the most important, even more important than, G7 summit or United Nations summit, even much more important than that, happened on the Vulture's Peak. The very illustrious conference participants, of course, the Buddha himself, Avalokiteshvara, Shariputra, so many mahasattvas, bodhisattvas, arhats, so many. And they weren't talking about economy. They weren't really talking about, they knew all of that. Among them there were so many great economists, masseuse, I think, health experts, linguists, so many great people. But what did they talk? They weren't talking about economy, politics. They weren't talking about, actually they weren't even talking about ecology. Can you believe that? But they were talking about something so important. They said, this is going to change the world. This. And only this, actually, towards the end of the Heart Sutra, if you read. This is the only medicine, the healing method for all ailments, outer, inner, secret ailments. This is what they decided. And if you read it, you will realize that they were talking about this, cause and the cessation of the cause. Okay, now there are so many what do the Americans call it? Smart ass, right? There are so many smart ass who actually come up with thesis after thesis, and this is the cause of this and that problem. But not many have come up with what will extinct the cause. You understand? So this second part of the Om Yedharma Prabhava, so important, because Buddha actually not only taught the cause of all the pain and problems, but he actually laid out in various ways. And when I say various, I really mean various ways. So many ways. He taught how to destroy, how to dry up, sterilize, destroy, how to discontinue, how to end the cause. And that the possibility of ending the cause. Because you see, there's a very big argument. I mean, you can really think very academically and intellectually here. Because it's ever possible to end the cause? Because the moment you even do something, because if you want to end strawberry, the very action of ending strawberry is the beginning of another cause. So, is it really possible to to discontinue all the cause? Yes. That's what this is where Buddha taught the Nirodha, that actually it is. to end all the cause. Just briefly, how do we do that? How do we do that? The moment we do something like ending the cause, isn't it a doing? Here Buddha actually taught the really amazing systematic path of how not to do anything. That's a difficult one. This is very, very difficult one, but there is the path. So anyway, that's just a very brief summary of Dandel. In Tibet, the Tibetan word Dandel also refers to auspiciousness, which is very interesting, actually. I actually like about that. It, of course, have been hijacked and corrupted a little bit, quite a lot, actually, by Tibetan folk habit and culture. Like early morning, my father, for instance, if he see an empty bucket lying here and there, he would get mad. He would say, "Oh, this is bad, Dandel. We must fill it up right away." So at a glance you will think, well, this is very Tibetan, superstitious oriented, so on and so forth. But if you can appreciate doings of cause and condition, it does make sense. It actually does make sense. So this is why, just before going through all this complicated subject, I'd like to tell you that one of the reasons why I thought, and actually it's not me, coming from great masters, because since we are going through such a strange time. Like, for instance, myself. If you ask me what I'm doing tomorrow, I can't tell you. Why? Because of this. Because of this apple. I'm in eye prison. Everything is iPhone, iPad, I this, I that. This is just one example. So much change. And I don't know whether they are good or whether they are bad. I don't know. I myself, I'm a very pessimistic person. Like myself, this is it. The world is basically going down the hill. It cannot be saved. It cannot. Saving some plastics here, there, it's just ridiculous. Not cutting few trees. What will this help? Nothing. I'm a very pessimistic. Anyway, but the change is just so much, and all this change is also doing something in our head. And after 30 years, I don't know what will happen. I can guess like this. We'll go into a museum and people will look at this and make remarks like how clunky this is and how so backward this is, and or it might come back as a retro, like fashionable thing to do. I don't know. We may plant. This actually sometimes is really tempting to, like very, very, like a atomic size of, like what do you call it? GPS monitoring, device that can be planted into the students. And monitor what they do, what they think, and what are they wearing. But this can happen. Anyway, what I'm saying is this. The benefit of chanting the mantra, Om Yedar Mahidu Prabhava Hedin Tekin Tadakata Hayavati Tekin Zayunirda Ambadi Mahasharmana Soha. We know that all this depends on cause and condition. And to the certain extent, we can manipulate cause and condition. Like, if you feel like you need to do something about your bowel movement, you can drink this and that. And I don't know, like, if you're constipated, fiber. If you need, increase your libido, get exercise, I guess, or whatever. Doesn't matter. I'm sure many of you are experienced with this, and you can find out from Google. To the certain extent, we can manipulate, we can try to understand cause and condition. To the certain extent, like 1 generation or 2 generations. But remember, each cause have million other cause and conditions, and this so difficult to understand. Why are you thinking what you are thinking right now? You are sitting here, supposedly some teaching is happening, but suddenly you could have a kinky thought. Why? You have never thought about anything kinky ever in your life. But why today? Why now? Something like this. It can happen. And all this cause and condition, this, like the other cause and condition of this cause and condition, so on and so forth. As we dig in, it's difficult. Only an enlightened being can tell you this. So when we can't understand those cause and condition, grandparent cause and conditions, then what happens? We either become eternalist or we become nihilist. We either become arrogant or we become depressed. No way to manipulate those cause and conditions. We just don't know what it is. And the mantra of dependent arising is to manipulate, to change, to transform these unseen, unobvious cause and conditions. Is it because of the power of the mantra? Yes. But not just because it is some sort of a revelation or some sort of a very, I don't know how to say this. Is some sort of supernatural, magical power? I like to say no, not just because of that, but we should define what is magic. What is magic? And this is what Khyentse Wangpo seems to, and this is only totally my understanding, so I could be wrong, but the teacher, Tajili number 2, number 3, but in the same generation, that in Jumata Beleda, Debun Jenny Jumatini, Evam the Sumba Konaki Junction Inji. What is this magic? You know, I was talking about the power of the mantra. You can understand this as some sort of a voodoo or some sort of a, charm or a spell. Is it a spell? I don't know how to answer this. I like to say no, it's not just a spell, but what is spell? Why we can even have a spell here? What is the magic? The magic is expressed here with 2 words, evam. And this is very important now. This is also very difficult, by the way. It's not that easy to express this. And here, please, those who believe themselves as tantric fanatics, I'm not teaching tantra here, okay? Evam, in this case, I'm talking about, the causal path. So what is the magic? Now let me put this first simply. The magic here is in order to express this magic, I have to go back again. Remember I was telling you, when a trained Buddhist person hear, everything comes from cause. In their ear, they could think, suffering, uncertainty, pain, dependent. Remember? But it also have another element. The trained Buddhist, when they hear things come from cause, they could immediately, their trained mind thinks, relative. It's a relative. It's untrue. In other words, actually, 강식 찐리 집에 맞지? 강식 찐 거다. 죄송합니다. 강식 찐리 집에 대 맞지, 여러분? 강식 죽을. Actually, this is what is said, that actually what we impute as something that came because of a cause, that actually proves that there is no such thing as true arising. So this is why the Buddhists don't really believe in Genesis. Because when we talk about Genesis, I think when we talk about Genesis, we are talking about the original cause, who is the almighty sponsor. This the Buddhists don't talk. So for a trained Buddhist ear, when you hear things comes from cause, in their ear, relative, not absolute. Okay, the relative. And for the sake of communication, let's call it fake, not true. Okay? Now let's go back to the magic. So when I say magic, what is the magic? The magic is the fake and the truth are inseparable. That is the magic. A kilo of water is a kilo of moisture. Kilo of fake is kilo of truth. So something like that, just for the sake of understanding, okay? I'm exaggerating a little bit here. Probably not, but I want to put that up anyway, in case there are some eager intellectual people. But anyway, this is the beauty, this is the magic of everything. You and I, it's not happening, but not happening is the happening also. This is the magic. And this is what is contained in the Om Yadharmaitu Prabhaveda. If you really chant this with the understanding of that, if you can chant with the understanding of that, in the not only contemplation but actual realization of that, problem is solved. Cause and conditions are either extinct, destroyed, dried up, burnt, demolished, deconstructed, or if not, at least you have managed to bribe them. At least you have managed to you have managed to create conspiracy. Yes. If you have managed to create that conspiracy with this seemingly systematic cause and condition, you are getting there then. You are quite good. You are object of veneration because you will not be easily, yes, you will not be easily corruptible. Okay, so it's because of this, for Mahayana Buddhism especially, I think generally all Buddhism, but especially in Mahayana Buddhism, dependent arising is like a synonymous to emptiness. Emptiness being, the dependent arising. Okay, I don't know, maybe I'm confusing you, but actually your dependent arising is almost like a paradox, or it's almost like an oxymoron. Dependent arising, which dependent arising is not a truly arising. It just seems that way. It just appears that way. But this is not, this is easier said than done, because most of beings like you and me, even though it appears that way, we always end up thinking they are not just appearance, but they are real. So, thinking an illusion as real is what we call delusion. And delusion creates more habit. And remember what habit does? It creates a lump. It creates a lump. It doesn't matter what kind of lump. Bulimic lump, six-pack lump, whatever, all kinds of lump. In fact, such a big lump, like the whole 6 realms are lump. They're all, basically lump. And lump, does it have a kind of a negative connotation, lump? Oh, good. Then that means I've chosen the right word. It's like an excess. It's like an excess. It's a burden. It's a burden. And it's a ridiculous burden, actually. Some burdens are not that ridiculous, but all this is a bit ridiculous because you really no need that. You can not have that. You cannot have that at the, single, smooth change of direction. You could almost discontinue all of that. But we just can't move our direction. We're just so used to this way. And when we are so used to something, we are so insecure with a lot of other things that we are not familiar with. And many of us, we just don't have the daringness to sort of go against that. So then all sorts of, stress bound by time and space, all of that stress, just so much stress. Even like, I was telling somebody other day, even, things as ridiculous like making massage appointment is a stress. 4 o'clock massage, Wednesday. From then on, you have a stress. You have to think of this massage appointment all the way. And it will shorten your life. Because you have this. And now our world has, because of thanks to this and all kinds of systems, we cannot do without that appointment and scheduling. Scheduling it should be, Buddhists talk about 3 suffering. I think it should be the 4th suffering, the scheduling. It's really the modern disease. It's so bad. And it's so depressing. It's one of the most depressing things. Maybe I'm being too emotional here, but like the fact that I'm talking about what will I do like April 2015, it's depressing. So we were talking about cause and condition and its effect. And ultimate cause being the so this is okay. So because of cause, condition, and effect, therefore there is binding and unbinding. The binding of the cause and condition, entanglement, and unbinding. Unbinding, sort of the shign. Yeah, unbinding, sort of release from that. Binding, entanglement process is what we call the samsaric experience, and unbinding, and finally having the illusion of being unbound is the nirvana. So this is a very big statement, because what it's saying is that both samsara and the nirvana, and for that matter, the path The very existence of the path is because of, when we talk about a path, we have to talk about an agenda. You have to have a goal of a path. And the goal being, to put it very crudely, is the happiness. But it's actually, unbinding of the entanglement, the game of cause and condition. That's what it is. So this is telling us that the whole game of samsara and the nirvana, and for that matter, the path, we can talk within the context of cause, condition, and effect. And this is a very big statement. I don't know how, I'm not doing a good job because I'm not doing a good job in expressing this because you should fall from the chair, basically. If you can understand this, because it is just so amazing. The whole seemingly this grand path of spiritual path can be found within this, just simple the binding and the non-binding, or the unwound, I don't know. And here, I'll just a little bit more about evam. The magic, the amazing magic of and this is what Nagarjuna said. When he praised the Buddha, he said, I praise the Buddha who never said that by abandoning samsara, you attain the nirvana. I praise to the Buddha who said, by knowing there is no samsara, that is the nirvana. Okay, one maybe practical question. So, how did all this come about? Path. What is this path? Path is here because we have urge to solve problem. It's simply that. We have habits to fix things. It's a big part of our economy is fixing things, isn't it? Fixing, troubleshooting and all that. That's why there's the path. Meaning, you have a problem, and you, yourself, just pretending, I have no problem, that won't do. Because if you skip a lunch and a dinner, you will realize you are not beyond problems. If somebody pinch your partner's bottom, you will realize you have a problem. So if you have a problem, you have the habit of solving it. So those who has that requires path. And here beautifully Shantideva said, and this is one quotation I love to quote again and again, and I think as long as I live, I'm sure I will quote this. This is what he said, that, I'm crudely translating this very badly, but that in order to dispel the suffering, in order to free ourselves from the suffering, for the time being, you are allowed to have a one ignorance. And that is thinking there's an enlightenment. And this is how the Buddhist path constitutes. This is the character of the Buddhist path. This is the character of the Buddhist path. So now, if I elaborate this a little bit more, just because it is here and I should sort of try to complete this, otherwise I will feel guilty. So this is the quintessential teaching of all the teachings of the Buddha, 84,000 of them. Om Yedar Mahidu Prabha, Chu Nyingpa, Tendrin Nyingpa, because Nyingpa means quintessence. It is the quintessence of all the Buddha's teaching. Okay? But out of necessary for the different people, different kinds of capacities, different kinds of attitude, and people with the different kinds of attitude, people with the different kinds of, upbringing, people with the different kinds of cultural background, people with the different kinds of hormone, people with the different kinds of whatever, people with the different kinds of... He had to say different things. So there are people who just want to get the hell out of samsara. People who just want to, once and for all, cut this ridiculous game of cause and condition. And for them, Buddha mainly focus on the five aggregates and mainly focus his teachings on the analysis of the five aggregates, which then leads them to understanding the selflessness of the person, and person being self, me. Now that, remember the strawberry example? That is one big misunderstanding. That is one big, we should not be seeing this self as this way, but we are doing it all the time. And that and recognizing that, identifying that, and then really uprooting that. And this is a really profound teaching. Such a profound teaching. Many of the so-called Mahayana people and the Vajrayana people, especially the Vajrayana people, they're such a elitist and purity. They're so... They look down at, some of them, they look down at these teachings, but it's so unfortunate. Because all this talk about the Buddha nature, we are all Buddha, all that, it could be very inspiring and very sort of lovey-dovey and very sort of uplifting for a while, but we always go back to our old habit of self-loathing, all that, low self-esteem, totally, either, we manifest this through so much arrogance and ego and all that, or, self-loathing and all of that. So, actually this aspect of the Buddha's teaching, which is really to deconstruct the very notion of the self. The selflessness, it seems that some people are kind of a bit wary about selflessness because it's already you think that, we have the low self-esteem. So, what is this selflessness about? For the low self-esteemed people, selflessness teaching is the best. Because then you don't even have to have low self-esteem. Because so this actually, I should like to point this out. I think it's so important to deconstruct, because human habit is such that because of the way you are brought up, way we are brought up, we have a certain idea coming from childhood, situation, all that. And we develop this habit, and the habit becomes a lump, remember? And later on, we kind of know that this is painful. So we hear things like, the deity, the mantra, the Tathagata Garbha, the Buddha nature. It's all so inspiring and all of that, but one always, when it matters, when somebody pinches someone else's bottom, when you miss few lunches or dinner, or when stock market crashes or something like that, the old habit comes back. And then it becomes like this old habit of self-loathing, old habit of self-clinging, which is coated by self-loathing and recoded for the Mahayana and the Vajrayana people, recoded another layer with Buddha nature, I'm deity, all of that. But inside, there's this, the fundamental culprit is still intact. Anyway, so this is a problem, and again, remember the Tenjing dependent arising has two elements, two aspects of the teachings. Buddha taught cause, but not only stopped there, but he also taught how to cut this cause, right? So how did he do that for these kind of people? Well, stages of shamatha, vipassana, which is really basically getting used to the truth, how you should see things, basically, and which then leads us to cutting the root of all this winding and entanglement, and then you actually reach to the nirvana. And very similar to the Pratyekayana Buddha, but which I'm not going to elaborate here. And on top of that, there are type of people, I was talking about different types of people. Then there are type of people who have a much bigger vision, who's not just interested in getting hell out of this and, like cutting the pain and the suffering, sort of a short term, and not short term, just that, but who has a much bigger vision. Bodhisattva path is all about vision. The vision is important. I think the Tibetan word is tseme, immeasurable vision. And, Americans should be, used to this. I always really tell this to Tibetans, that American forefathers, whoever planned New York City, for instance, they must have had a great vision, actually, like keeping acres and acres of land for Central Park. I mean, those days, 80 years, how many years ago? 100 years, probably? I'm sure there's not this much car, but then they already had that vision. So vision, the Bodhisattva's vision. So the Bodhisattva's vision, in nutshell, a Bodhisattva never want to finish job. I mean, end, the target, the finishing line is never the Bodhisattva's agenda, to reach to the finishing line. You understand? As Pranidhana Raja said, as the sky is limitless, this much there is a sentient being, and my prayer is also this much. And great Bodhisattvas like Sai Nimpo, Siddhigarva, he actually, prayed that he will never be enlightened. The great vision. And I think this great vision it's really one thing that we, people like us, we really needed. Because if you have a big vision, let's say if you're doing a business, if you have a big vision of making $1 billion, few hundred or few thousand, loss, you won't, make a big deal out of that, right? Because you have a big vision. So if your vision is not reaching to the finishing line, if your vision is nothing to do with you getting enlightenment, then it immediately releases you from all kinds of ridiculous problem. So I think that, anyway, there are type of people who have a big vision, really, really big vision. Very sort of nicely nosy people. Nosy? What do you call it? Nosy, when? Very, so beautifully nosy people. They are. And who also knows how to be nosy though, sort of. So, for them, Buddha, Om Yedar Mahidu Prabhava. Okay, I'm still talking about the Om Yedar Mahidu Prabhava. That mantra refers to basically, because of that vision, now the cause of the suffering is also looked at in a much bigger way. Cause of the suffering is not just the self-clinging, clinging to the person, the self, the me, but it is actually clinging to everything. So really aspiring to understand the selflessness of everything becomes this paramount. And for that, what do? The Bodhisattvas create, remember, tendril, auspiciousness, or dependent. Okay, now, see, this is a game, remember? How the game of being bound by cause and condition. So now we play another game to unbound ourselves. So for this kind of visionary people, which you and I, many of us, will be supposedly practicing, I guess, we should be really creating this kind of cause and condition through, through through trying to manipulate the situation. Like glass of milk, and you put a little bit of sugar. Milk is manipulated, corrupted. It has become sweetened milk. Like this, the bodhisattvas, we try to, every time we manage to, we have time, every time when we can remember, we try to put in love and compassion, the sugar, in every situation. To really confuse the usual game of cause and condition. We have to confuse it. And there's so many great strategies, actually, the Bodhisattva path. There's even, I was talking about bribing the confusion. We can even let them, we can even send spies. We can let the ego think that they have won by, I don't know, give them a little bit of a triumph, so to speak. It's an incredible path. It's just an incredible path. But always it ends with dismantling the culprit. For instance, like for immeasurable thoughts, love, compassion, joy, equanimity, relative bodhicitta, ultimate bodhicitta. 6 parameters, out of 6 parameters, 6th, the wisdom, absolutely necessary. But for the more small-time bodhisattvas, we let them have the joy of being generous, being, morally sound, have some sort of a hard-working kind of index. And then, of course, the wisdom. The most important. The transcendental wisdom, the wisdom of non-duality. In fact, the speed of a bodhisattva's path, power of the bodhisattva's path, impact of the bodhisattva's path, all gets determined by how much a bodhisattva can apply the wisdom. There are type of the bodhisattvas who may be very good with loving compassion. But the love and compassion is not accompanied is not the right word, but the love and compassion is not rooted or sealed by the wisdom, then such kind of love and compassion is narrower, more limited. Such kind of bodhisattva also gets exhausted, gets discouraged. Or, I should put it in a more positive way, this kind of bodhisattva needs more encouragement. This kind of bodhisattva needs more defined path. Similarly, methods such as shamatha quintessentially technique of not getting distracted, no distraction. But if this technique of no distraction is not rooted to the wisdom, then and when we say, of course, the wisdom, we are talking about the highest level of the wisdom, then one-pointed concentration may be very impressive. One-pointed concentration can be achieved and can be very impressive and may look very under control, but remember I was talking about coated with all kinds of quotes. I'm sorry, now I'm talking very cryptic, but this is how I'm managing at the moment. If it is not rooted to the wisdom, then one-pointed concentration is not something genuine bodhisattva should die for, basically. Who cares? You have such a great mind of being able to concentrate on one point, but without any wisdom. Doesn't do much. It's, yeah. So the wisdom, therefore, becomes very important. And wisdom, not only this, wisdom is a really encouraging, seemingly long-winded path of the bodhisattva, seemingly infinite number of the sentient beings. Forget infinite, one sentient being that we are trying to help. His or her mood, his or her, demand, his or her questions, and his and her just ever-changing mood or character or smell or whatever, all these things, tolerating this and having a patience with this, so difficult for the Bodhisattva. Just to, and when you don't have the wisdom, most of the time, when you help somebody without the wisdom, you are always imposing this poor somebody, your definition of what he or she should have. And it becomes so problematic. Okay, now this sounds really discouraging for some of us, those who have no wisdom. So what do we do? This is where I will end. Saying this. Aspiration. So, therefore, aspiration is the most feasible, viable, doable, economical, and really practical tendel. It's the most powerful dependent, creating the dependent arising situation. If you want to be a bodhisattva, and if you want to wage this war, this is your last bullet. Aspiration. This, you should keep it in your belt. And always make sure that it is there. Especially, after a pee or something like that, you understand? It could drop. Aspiration. Such an important thing. So, I've already done several times, but I'll again chant Om Yed as a transmission Om Yedar Mahit Prabhav Evam Badi Mahashamana so Pisum Sopama Sajidu Jitin Sumjumbatum Sanje Pemantam Richam, Teni Jitin Givitasham, Teni or the Bichor Mivajism to Hadam Church Tamachu, Teni Jitin Givitashin by Gindin Macho to Medan Jimidan Tama, you will search your own session by Jitin Jitin Givitashim. This is a tradition of transmission is called lung, and this is yet again creating a cause and condition. And I have heard this sound of the mantra from my master, many masters actually, and they have heard from their masters, and they have heard from their masters. We can trace all the way back to Asanji. And Asanji ultimately heard it from the Buddha. So there is the spiritual DNA, kind of. So that's why it's got nothing to do with me being powerful or anything like that. It's just creating that karmic link for those who haven't heard the transmission in the past. I think I've run out of things to say. We have finished. I think originally I was hoping, I thought the 100 million, 100 million, 1,000 million? Yeah, 1,000 million will take long time, but somehow everybody became so diligent around the world, and I was so amazed. Myself, I have to confess, I only did 5. But anyway, so it's amazing. It's more than half is finished from the time that we have announced. So now I am cooking some other ideas to create more cause and create right cause and condition. It could be like when we finish this, I've not decided yet. It could be that we will offer 1,000 million flowers, 1,000 million lamps, free 1,000 lives, 1,000 million lives, so on and so forth. So, people like me and you, many of you, I'm sure, we like doing these things also, and we should. This creates a good, like meditation, like not rushing to the not rushing up to the past, not anticipating the future. Oh, that's so difficult. I'm telling you, it won't. Most of the time you are kidding yourself. I'm telling you. I'm sure it looks very impressive. It looks very impressive, sitting straight and all that. And probably it's kind of relaxing too for you, so that you can be mean on the next Monday. You are already, but as I was talking about the aspiration, and this practice is seemingly very religious, but I think it's quite important. So when we have an idea, we will share this with you, and I hope people will participate. One thing, there's this something called live stream, which I didn't even know. When I was in Berlin this time, I was teaching, and then after my teaching, I have this friend in Taiwan who actually is a taxi driver. He said, he immediately sent me a text and says, "Oh, thank you, I've received your teaching, Then I said, well, how did you hear? He said, oh, through his phone while he's driving around in the city. My teachings is really basically probably big cause of the waste of your time, but maybe since at least the contents is the Dharma, hopefully this creates a right cause and condition. But one thing, some people seem to have recorded these teachings and then upload in the YouTube and all that. I hate to hear my voice from the machine. And worse, when I see myself talking from this, I just can't stand it. So here I'd like to request everybody not to do that. Also, lastly, we dedicate this merit to all the bodhisattvas, their activities, and I always have the aspiration to, I know many of you know this, but I want to reconfirm this again. I have the wish to reborn as a woman and run as a Republican American president in my next life. Republican. Please have wish assist my aspiration. You are welcome to be my vice president or a chief of staff or anything like that if you wish. But this, please. And actually, slightly more dictatorial. That's what I'm hoping for. Okay. Thank you.